Welcome to FM3 Design. We're back, been gone for a while. But today, I want to talk about stick welding electrodes, the selection, the use, care, and storage. And here on the screen shows you the more typical welding rods or electrodes we normally use. The E60, 10, 11, 13, 14, the E70, 14, 24, 16, 18. It goes up from there to 80s, 100s, 120s, and so on for a higher alloy strength. So notice on the screen here the different electrodes. I put in the classification of the electrode, the welding current, whether it's positive or negative or AC or whatever, the type of arc. It's a digging arc, a deep arc, soft arc, light arc, medium, whatever it is as far as how hard it penetrates into the material, as well as the penetration. The coating or slag type, and there's many different types of that, but here are the common ones that are that. So like in the 6010 we've got cellulose sodium, 6011 cellulose potassium, then 13 is going to be titania potassium, 14 is going to be titania iron powder, then the 14 is another titanium iron powder. The 24 again is another titanium iron powder. 16 is low hydrogen sodium. Now, I grew up with that being called a Murex rod. Don't ask me why Murex was a manufacturer back then. It's now owned by Lincoln. Obviously, the more common one is E7018, which happens to be the low hydrogen, which happens to be iron powder, which has a higher deposition or fill rate when it comes to handling the electrodes and how it fills the gap on the rods. Also notice that the E stands for electrode, 60 is for 60,000 pound tensile strength, 70 is for 70,000 pound, obviously E80 would be 80,000, E100 would be 100,000 pound, and E120 would be 120,000 pound tensile strength. Now, the next digit, the 1, 2, etc., has to do with position you can weld. Notice that the E7014 is pretty similar rod, same powder and everything else. However, the 2 in it stands for flat welding, designed to take a weld flat. No, you can't weld. It's not recommended overhead. I don't think you can weld overhead with it. 7014 though can weld overhead or whatever. The high deposition rate. Notice that the iron powder content on it is 50%. Again, like it's a higher deposition rate. That's why it's flat. It pours the metal to it a lot quicker. So now, some of the description of like the E6010 rod are known as typically deep penetration, dig through rust, oil, paint, dirt. A lot of pipe welders use it for the all position for root weld passes on the pipe. So the 6011 can also be used for all position welding as an alternative current AC welding power source. Like 6010, the 6011s are deep penetrating arc that cuts through corrosion or unclean materials. Very good for buzzbox welding. The 6011 is, where you're working with not exactly clean material, stuff like that. Now, the 6013 electrode is best used for light and medium penetration on thin metal or sheet metal. The 6011 electrode offers more penetration than 13, so you need to weld heavier materials when you use that. Then we move into the 70, we'll go up to 7014 next. And the 7014 is used for, I call it farm welding, generally used for low, mild alloy steels. Got a little iron in it. I mean, it makes a nice smooth weld. Looks pretty decent. Nice weld. But 7014 we call it a farm rod. Don't ask me why. Grew up that way. Life goes on. So 7024 got a lot of iron. Notice it's 50%. So at 50%, it's got increases the deposition. That fill rate thing we talked about. Well, these electrodes perform well on steel plate, 1/4 inch thick or worse. and they also measure over, up past ½ inch very comfortably. Well, then we move into the 7016. The 7016 is a low hydrogen rod, all position, usually heavy duty steel structure and plates. This electrode is going to provide for an excellent arc, stability, and produces an X-ray quality weld deposits with a higher crack resistance, elongation, and ductility other than other mild steel electrodes. Again, it's a 70,000 pound rod. You notice it has no iron content in it, so it's going to have a lower deposition rate, but it does have that X-ray quality capability. So the 7018 rod is, again, thick metal, structural, real common. It's got high impact, good in cold weather, can be used on all kinds of carbon and high carbon steel, low alloy, and steel best strengths. Now, the challenge with 7018 or any low hydrogen rod is that they tend to draw moisture, and they have to be dried very specifically. I'd like to now talk about the storage and handling of the electrodes, preferably only discussing primarily the low hydrogen. Obviously, all rods need to be kept dry and protected. The flux on them is all affected by moisture. I've actually, in the years gone by, actually went to strike an arc and had all the flux pop off the rod. Kind of embarrassing, but it does happen. So, in the case of low hydrogen, the 7018s, they're working really hard to make the rods a little more protected. So, if you have a 7018 rod, and you notice there's a letter R stamped on the rod, it's designed to be away from the box for 9 hours before moisture can affect it. Once your rods are affected and have been either exposed to high humidity and or somehow gotten wet, now notice that there's a rod drying conditions for low hydrogen stick electrodes. That the 7018s and 28s, obviously those are in 7016 would be also in there. Anything in the 16 and 18 range, and 2016, 2018 are going to have a drying factor of 650 to 700 degrees for drying, whether it's been in moisture or not. Now the higher density rods, the E70, E80s through 110s and 120s are going to be the higher temperatures at 700 to 800 degrees. So if the electrode's actually gotten wet, you're going to want to take and clean it or start permanently drying it between 180 and 220. So back when I was at the sawmill many years ago, we kept the welding electrodes, all of them, whether the 60 series or 70 series, or even the 100, 120 series, in a refrigerator. And in the refrigerator, they had a heater that kept it about 150 degrees all the time. Now, that's a little warm, but we're welding in a sawmill, and there's a lot of safety issues there. So running around with welding rods in the back of your truck for 2 weeks or something like that is completely unacceptable when it comes to maintaining the welding integrity. And nothing's worse than having a weld does not have integrity, because somebody could get hurt. Here's some of the more common rod dryers. Looks like a refrigerator one. You got vertical cans, got little ones for drying rods in small quantities, other ones, and then the one on the right hand side happens to be the typical barrel dryer. Well, I have one of those. They seem to work pretty good. They range in price all over the place. You can look around eBay and local once in a while has them. Some of them are not exactly brand new looking, but they still work. So as long as it's got a good heater in it and stuff like that, can dry the rod appropriately, then you can keep your rod dry and maintain some good welding capabilities, because the rod's dry and the flux is actually working correctly to create the gas shield, and also the deposition rate that protects the welding from what it does. So The Fabricator is one of the magazines I've subscribed to, and it's got a lot of information about welding, tools, different things that are of great interest to me. If you're not interested in subscribing, you may want to consider going to the fabricator.com, it's on the screen, and look very in-depth to what's there to find out what kind of welding, or if you have other things about grinding or finishing or something like that, all that information is there. And they've got some great articles that's written by professional people. That's more for the manufacturing commercial world than us, although it's really helpful. I mean, they've got some great ideas and stuff there that help quite a bit. Well, I hope you enjoyed this information. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. We'll be soon back out in the shop and making sparks and grinding away at things. I really appreciate your time. Have a great day. And be sure and subscribe.